So that was a beautiful spot. Now I'm going to go down the hill and see if that valley down there can take me back in the direction that I want to go. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge. One doesn't want to go back the way from whence one came, does one? So, I'm going to go this way. Let's see if it goes down to that valley. It's a big crapshoot. You don't even know if these roads go through or not. This one seems like it does. Yeah, so you find your nice place. And if you already have a nice place, you hunker down and build. Get the stuff you need. Establish the relationships you want. And then see if you can do any good. Wow. And this country is nice, you know. It's safe, it's civilized, people are generally nice. I'm too old to live in the cities here. I did my city stints. Big cities. Shanghai, Tokyo, big. Shanghai. One doesn't throw caution to the wind at my age. I just go down the hill kind of slow. Wee little village after wee little village. That's the European way. Instead of driving 5 hours through cornfields in Kansas. Cornfields ahead, cornfields behind, cornfields to the left of me, cornfields to the right of me. Nice spot. Then you say, it's a little piece of heaven there. The fairy kingdom. Yeah, this is definitely camera worthy. It's a lot to show, but it's pretty. Don't know when to turn the camera off. It smells so good. Man, I loved Shanghai when I lived there, but boy, noisy, polluted. I used to ride a bike all over Shanghai in the traffic. Not such a great idea, but I enjoyed it because I could get to know the city really, really well, and I was free, you know, from public transport and taxis. Suicidal taxi drivers. And I could find the back streets. I could get around town pretty quick. Faster than people taking the subway in some cases. Same thing in Tokyo. Hong Kong not so much because, oh boy, where to go? Because Hong Kong has so many mountains and hills, and it's hard to access by bicycle. So you're pretty limited in where you can go. You take a bicycle to Lantau Island and ride around. In Tokyo, you could go from Tokyo to Kamakura, no worries. Go down the Tamagawa River to Yokohama. Hachioji, wherever. And there's so many little river roads and back streets that are fairly direct and clean. The air wasn't as bad in Tokyo. But then you're out here and it's like, whew, man, smells good, looks good. It's fun in Tokyo to ride around, watch the people. I love that. But it's also nice to be out here with less people. And when the restrictions are gone, you can go to Lisboa and do street photography and run around. It's a lot of fun. Coimbra is a nice city, and Porto, of course, Porto, beautiful. But on a day-to-day basis, you're chilling in this environment. Reminds me of Northern California. Which is so lovely. It's just a damn shame that the climate's shifting so quickly, and the fires and floods and all this stuff. Hard to predict, but the models are starting to jive with the data, the empirical data. Ooh, there you go. There's your wind power ridge. WPR. Wind power ridge. Wow. Sweet. And here's a main road going back in the direction that I want to go. So that was pretty lucky. As long as I see that ridge, I have a parallel, direction finder pointing me in the right direction. I can follow that ridge where it's pointing for a while, and then I can turn left and wind my way back into my area. Yeah, bicycle, man, I was so happy when my wrist healed and my hip healed, because this is just pure joy for me. The pace of a bicycle is perfect, and you can see everything, feel everything, smell everything. You feel like you're in the moment, in the landscape. It's easier to connect with people. Oh man, it's just so good. And I loved my urban cycling, and I'm lucky I survived it. But this is also wonderful. She's cleaning the cobwebs. Detail-oriented avô, grandmama. It's hard to say grandfather and grandmother in Portuguese. Avô, avô, I don't know. AVO, but a different accent. It's going to be a while before I get there. Professor. If I'd kept going the other direction, I would have made it to Santana Market for sure. But I think it's time to head back towards lunch. So at the Cospolon, I'm going to tell a story, a true story as stories go. Is it fact or is it fiction? I don't know. You're going to suspend your disbelief for some entertainment? Sure, why not? About this fella I met in India in the 1970s and then ran into a bunch of times over the next 10 years in my 20s. And it's one of those things. When you think the future doesn't matter and you realize that the future is now. It's, and none of the physics, the many worlds, or the multiverse, or string theory, none of it's even close. And that there's so much more math to discover. But if you get 8,000 years out into the future, and there's still human beings, Homo sapiens on this planet, what do you think it would be like? And what were all the hurdles that you had to go through? Because think about civilization, maybe let's pretend it started, 8,000 years ago. Mesopotamia or Egypt or wherever the hell. And it kind of plodded along for a long time, and the usual stuff happened, ups and downs. You had philosophy in ancient Greece, and just imagine how much of that was lost. I mean, yeah, we have a few people. We look at Plato and Euripides or whoever you want to point to, it doesn't matter. Any ancient source of Chinese wisdom. But that's just a few. Imagine the other people that were there at the time, and we lost them. We didn't just lose Alexandria to a fire in Egypt. We lost it to other things as well. People burning books and stealing things, And imagine our civilization when our recording media is no good anymore and there's nothing that'll play back anything that we have. And somebody finds a time capsule in northern Norway somewhere with seeds and data in it and the machines to play back the data. And you say, fuck, look at what they were doing 1,000 years ago or whatever. My God, and maybe a lot of that was lost, right? I mean, if you have the right instruments and you're an alien, you can look down below the ground and see this ubiquitous layer of e-waste across the planet, Industrial waste and trash, consumer goods trash everywhere. And maybe it's a jungle, the world. Maybe it heated up and became a jungle again. Weird animals and stuff. And maybe a few people did survive in Antarctica or whatever. Who knows? Anyway. So you're an alien, you can see that. But the rest of the people can't. They can't play back shit. And maybe they don't want to, because they have some mythology about how bad things were during our period, and you don't want to open that Pandora's box again, because if you open that Pandora's box again, shit's going to happen and it's not going to be pleasant. So you have to, avoid it, shut it down. I mean, the counterfactual stuff, what constitutes a person? What is consciousness? How do we say, what's fact, what's fiction, when we're talking about the future or the past? And when you're in this illusory time continuum that we call life experience, it's an odd state of affairs. Who can say? But one thing you have to cultivate in this world of ours is an imagination. To do that, you have to keep learning things, right? Remember what happened in the past, learn from the past, learn in the present, speculate and imagine what you're going to do in the future, right? These normal stuff. Motivational seminar stuff. And you're looking forward into the future and you're saying, whoa, wait a minute, look what we found. And some little cult in that Lapland zone where there's some people says, we need to know what this stuff is. And I think we can figure it out. Because some of us held on to some of this information in secret. And so it's going to be delicate to keep it away from the village elders who will burn us at the stake if we're caught messing with this stuff. But we're going to unravel the information in this time capsule and figure out what the hell's going on. What is it? Is it alien technology? Is it about the past? Human history? And so they unwind it. But let's say this little cult has been living in kind of a very, very rigid, intense wisdom tradition. And they have to treat things like this with incredible reverence and care and caution, because it's beyond magical. It creates outcomes, right? So, bom dia. So they're thinking, man, we got to do this right. We got to understand it. So they spend like 1,000 more years, generations, figuring this stuff out. And in an almost religious sense, right? But they're unraveling the science and the math and the physics. And they know it's magical, and they know it's powerful, and they know that it destroyed the world way back when. Because there's myths and stories about it. And there's all the reason in the world to believe those myths and stories. And they're more cautious. They're different than us. They're not at all like us. That's a cute dog. And so they... Ooh, it's very nice. I'll go this way this time. There's a park down here that's kind of nice. I wonder if I go that direction where I'll come out. Here's a school and a museum and a sports ground. So anyway, they figure things out and they go a different direction with all of the magical, technical, and scientific knowledge that they're unraveling over hundreds of years, generations. And a new culture is born, and it rides through different epochs of, climate and so on, and comes out 8,000 years later. Only now these people, man, their technical understanding is way, way beyond ours, because they went a totally different direction with it. Reverential. Really respecting the magic of the technology and the science and saying, wow, this could be amazing. But we need to be fully human people. We can't go back to the point where we're using this to destroy life and to destroy each other. So here's a dead end I learned about. Nice to know. So they know they're not going to go that direction. So it's almost like a priesthood. Game B people talk about the alpha rule. You're kind of wondering about, what kind of gate you have to keep vandals from coming in and destroying your efforts, you know? How things must be curated, but not necessarily censored, right? It's a delicate, delicate game that we haven't figured out. And we're still in the throes of it, you know, with cancel culture and freedom of speech issues and different cultures around the world that treat these things totally differently. But these people in the future are aware of this stuff. So it's almost like a priesthood, you know, who's going to develop and manage this process of unraveling and expanding on the math and physics and the technology, taking us in a different direction. And then you can try to imagine, you know, what kind of stuff they discover when they're not doing it for money or power or control. And they're not doing it to win wars. They're not doing the game A thing, the game theoretic, you know, hyper-competitive, I gotta get there first or my enemy's gonna get there and kill me mentality. So imagine that occurred for a few thousand years. Because the way it is now, honestly, since the Industrial Revolution, you know, it's amazing what happens in a couple hundred years, isn't it? What you can come up with. But it's also amazing at the unintended consequences and the dangers that come with it. So you get to a point where you're like, you've got nuclear warheads on ramjets that can take nuclear warheads anywhere in the world in minutes and kill millions of people and probably unleash a nuclear winter or something horrible. You know, really good for the economy. We're having a hard time balancing the COVID-19 thing and the economy, so policy is very complex. So imagine trying to figure out how you're going to bounce back from nuclear war. We can't fucking get vaccinations into people's arms. Nobody can agree if it's worth it or not. Imagine what we're going to do when we have to figure out how we're going to take care of people who have radiation sickness all over the fucking place. So that's where we are now with it all. You know, it's like everything's a fashion, right? Guns are a fashion. I need a pink one. I need a Camel revolver. I need a Smith & Wesson and a Browning. You know, can't have, you know, these guys collect them. Like my knife collection. You know, it's a fetish. It's fashion. Every year you gotta look like you're dressing like the 1920s now because we've cycled through all the fashion. So next season, it's flapper time. And we can't coordinate on anything like a new power grid because we're still competing in the old business paradigm, which means that you have to win at that game before you can get into a new game because you need the resources. So it's easy to rationalize. I got to make another $1 billion, hoard that cash before we can do any R&D on this other thing, because the other thing isn't big business now. And if I don't do the other thing, I won't be able to, you know, if I don't do this thing, of this competitive, vicious thing, I'll never be able to do the good thing. If I can only make $1 trillion, then I can pledge all of my money to philanthropy, and I can just sit back and relax with $1 billion and all of my physical assets, and, you know, be the genius philanthropist that I am. And it's all gonna be great. So that's the ticket, right? You gotta play the game to change the game. And we can't imagine just like leapfrogging. You know, you could paradigm shift just like you shift a stick shift in a car. We could do it. But we're hamstrung because of the financial incentives and the markets. So, you know, we gotta print money so that the game can continue and the players can get paid. And to hell with the people. It's always like that. You can't point back in time and say, well, you know, in 1643 in Somerset, England, it was a really perfect time and place to be alive, you know. 1960s, well, yeah, if you were rich in the 1960s and living on Lake Como, pretty good. But if you're rich living on Lake Como in 2021, it's pretty good. So anyway, I'm gonna stop now because that's the story I'm gonna tell. It's about that mysterious individual that I know and the stories that he told me. I'm sorry the protagonist is a he, but you know, it just turned out that way. When you come back to our period of history and you're a he, you just have some advantages. I hate to say it, it's wrong, but it's true. So, what can we learn from that person's stories? I don't know, a lot, but it's pretty interesting anyway, so I'm gonna tell it. And then I'm going to talk to people around here and see what they think about everything. Not to, you know, catastrophize all the time, but to see what people are doing to make things work. Because we're still alive. Life is precious. Deserves our respect. Uliam T. Out.